So an MSNBC anchor apparently hasn't read any of the polls, and this is in the Daily Caller podcast, listeners. MSNBC's Jonathan Lemire said inflation doesn't seem to be of concern for most Americans, despite recent polling to the contrary. So, once again, you're always living in an alternative universe with the modern media, right? So the media is telling you inflation's not a concern. Public safety is not a concern. Yes, none of those things are a concern. You don't have nothing to worry about. You have nothing to worry about that there's not enough electricity. Electricity is not a concern for the American people. The fact that there may not be enough electricity in Europe shouldn't be a concern for the Europeans. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, the media is just getting dumber. But more importantly, they're thinking that you don't even see through this, that in your mind, when you go to the store, things just don't cost more. That you have to buy less, you have to save more, you have to really count your pennies more. Anyway, here's this MSNBC host. We have a clip on this, and he's essentially interviewing an expert about this matter. And I want you to listen closely to just understand whether you think the media understands what's in the electorate's mind. We have that clip, and here it is.
Mainstream Republicans anyway, don't want to talk about election deniers. They know that the most Americans are out of step with that. They don't want to talk about Lindsey Graham's new abortion proposal, knowing this has animated those on the left so far. What they do want to talk about is the economy, and they did seem to get, a weapon for that their arsenal with the inflation numbers, but yet gas prices remain low. The inflation, though up, doesn't seem to be the top of mind for a lot of Americans right now. So if they don't have an economic argument, what can they sell the American people between now and November?
I think you're going to see a very strong emphasis on crime. You're going to see a strong, I think, sort of attempt to whip up a lot of fear about rising crime numbers in the cities. And that defund the police, even though that's been purged, very much from the fringe democratic agenda. And there are, in fact, bills before the House, or being prepared before the House, to strengthen the police, whilst strengthening measures to deal with bad actors within the police. That will still be a big election, part of the Republican election agenda.
So that's fall. MSNBC's Jonathan Lemire asking the question to Edward Luce. So Edward Luce, who had the British accent, is a reporter for the Financial Times. And so I thought it was funny that MSNBC's Jonathan Lemire, an anchor at MSNBC, has to ask someone from England a question about inflation in the U.S. So would you just ask like regular American people who aren't in elective office from MSNBC, say, hey, Mr. Smith, I see you're walking into the grocery store. What do you think about inflation? Is this a concern at all? Why don't you do that? That would be like real reporting. But no, MSNBC has to ask someone from Great Britain the question, as if that would really make a difference to the American people. And of course, the first question that the MSNBC host decided to ask was about inflation. Well, inflation's really not a concern with the American people. And then, of course, they pivoted. This Mr. Luce gentleman with the British accent pivoted and said, oh, yeah, well, so much about inflation. The real issue, as we've seen a little bit, is about crime. But you know what? The Democrats have already put in bills to take care of that. Yeah, they have. The bills they've put in have made America's cities less safe, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, which is also why we're calling this Exodus Part Duh. So also duh for the Democrats. But I think there are two takeaways from this MSNBC's host, Jonathan Lemire. First, he says inflation isn't of a concern. And the second, we shouldn't really be concerned about crime in the cities because bills will take care of that. In other words, we will pass bills in the United States Congress and in state legislatures that will make the streets safer because we are pretty much acknowledging the streets aren't safe. Folks, these people literally believe that passing a bill will solve a problem. And this is part of what is fundamentally wrong with this country because so many young people have been educated to think just that. Well, if I just pass a bill, the problem will be solved. Yeah, sure. So to rebut what that anchor of MSNBC just said, also in the Daily Caller, inflation roars at 8.3%. This is just from, 2 days ago? So the editor of the Daily Rundown, inflation roars at 8.3%, breaking this AM two days ago. CNBC, which is part of the NBC network, inflation rose 0.1% in August, even with sharp drop in gas prices. So I think this is interesting, right? This shows you a little bit about who's reporting. So CNBC is like, inflation rose 0.1% in August. But that happened even though there was a sharp drop in gas prices. But gas prices have doubled. So if gas prices drop a little bit, it seems like a sharp drop, but they doubled since the former administration was in office. Obviously, once again, crooked reporting. But inflation rose more than expected in August as rising shelter and food costs offset a drop in gas prices, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported Tuesday. The Consumer Price Index, which tracks a broad swath of goods and services, increased 0.1% for the month and 8.3% over the past year. Excluding volatile food and energy costs, CPI rose 0.6% from July and 6.3% from the same month in 2021. Kind of interesting, right? Excluding food and energy costs. Why would you exclude food and energy costs from inflation? Because you need energy to heat and cool your house and power your car. And you need food in order to power yourself and stay alive. But, of course, the government, excluding food and energy costs, you might die if we exclude them. But if you exclude them, inflation doesn't look that bad. Economists had been expecting headline inflation to fall 0.1% and core to increase 0.3%, according to Dow Jones estimates. The respective year-over-year forecasts were for 8% and 6% gains in inflation. And here are some other headlines in this same article. Food prices explode. Wow, keep an eye on skyrocketing food costs. The food index increased 11.4% over last year, the largest 12-month increase since the period ending May 1979, ladies and gentlemen. Eggs break the bank. Some of the most dramatic price increases are in basics that families buy every week. Eggs are up a whopping 40% from last year. 40%. Butter and margarine, 29%. Deli meats, 18%. Milk, 17%. And bread, 17%. Think about this, right? One of the basics that people always buy from the grocery stores. Bread and milk. Bread is up 17% and milk is up 17%. Eggs are up 40%. Potatoes, another staple of many families, up 15%. And groceries are only getting more expensive, with grocery prices in August seeing its largest increase in 43 years. Americans are still getting poorer. Real wages have fallen every month since Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus passed. Why are real wages falling every month since the passage of the stimulus? Because if things cost more and you are making the same amount of money as you did a year ago, and the chances of that are probably pretty good that you're making the same amount of money, then things are costing you more. So your real wage, that would be your real wage, now is less because you have less purchasing power. Ladies and gentlemen, this is important stuff because MSNBC's anchor, right? This is the person who is considered one of the most respected individuals in a network. MSNBC's anchor is saying inflation's not an issue. It's not on people's minds. So it's not going to be an issue in the fall, when, of course, we have every single member of the United States House of Representatives up for election. Oh, it's not an issue at all. So unbelievable. And that's why we just wanted to share this information with you, because we have a smear and misinformation campaign that is ongoing. And not to mention that in that same so-called interview on MSNBC, one of the gentlemen said, the British gentleman, said that there really wasn't a crime issue to worry about anymore because Democrats are going to pass bills, or Democrats are passing bills to be able to quell the rising crime. And after all, there really isn't rising crime, nothing to worry about.